Welcome everybody. How are you doing? Hola a todos. ¿Cómo están? ¿Cómo se encuentran? I'm sorry for all this madness. Lo siento mucho por toda esta locura. But internet has been going crazy these days. So yesterday I couldn't be here in the live. So today we will have two live classes because it's not like it's just to avoid to be like messed up with the schedule. Vamos a tener dos lives el día de hoy para evitar enredarnos con la programación, porque saben que cada día estamos teniendo un tema sobre, por ejemplo, español, inglés, y bueno, vamos alternando para no alterar esa programación que ya tenemos y que nos está funcionando bastante bien. So, today we're having two live streams because we have a very busy schedule. We have a schedule very variated. So I don't want to mess it up, like having like having sorry that I just read a message here, like leaving behind some topics that we already scheduled. So for today we'll have two, and tomorrow we'll continue with our normal schedule, with our regular schedule, in order to follow our topics. Remember that we're having one day Spanish and the other day English. So it's been really successful. So I'd like to keep that going on. So today we have reflexive verbs in Spanish. Of course, remember that these Spanish topics are explained in English, and this has like a double function. The first function is of course explaining to non-Spanish speaker what's happening with my English today. The first the first part is explaining to non-native speakers, people that are studying Spanish as a second language, like to give them the opportunity to understand Spanish grammar in a good and very interactive way. And the other goal is also that students of English as a second language can have a listening comprehension practice in a very slow and a very practical way. So it has this double function. And after this live, as I just commented, we'll have another live stream, but that live stream will be in Spanish, explaining so, to, either, and neither. Those are English. This is an English topic explained in Spanish. So if you're here, if you speak English, you're learning Spanish, you can go there as well in order to practice your listening comprehension in Spanish. So here we're pleasing everybody. And that will be very good today's schedule. So let's get started. I will share my screen right away. So first of all, I'd like to share that if you hear some airplane sounds and noises, it's because today I think that today is it's not a holiday, but it's a special day here in Peru. It is the day of the army. I don't remember that well, but well, there have been lots of airplanes in the sky, so that's why it is kind of noisy today. But let's get started. So reflexive verbs in Spanish. This is a topic that I've explained lots of times in my Spanish class, because of course, as you can guess, reflexive verbs that don't exist in English. So what we have is basically to introduce the student to the logic, to the reflexive verbs logic in this language. It's important to know, it's important to say as well that reflexive verbs exist in most, I will say most because I don't know all like Roman languages. I don't know all of them, but in the Roman languages that I know, like Spanish, of course, Italian, French, Portuguese, Catalan, you have this. You have reflexive verbs in this 4 or 5 languages that I just mentioned. You have this reflexive verb. So if you understand the logic behind this type of verbs, so you will understand the rest of languages. If you want to study other languages like French, Portuguese, Italian, Catalan, if you want to study them, that will be much easier if you understand the logic behind reflexive verbs from Spanish, because it's practically the same in those languages as well. Maybe the difference is that in if you have a reflexive, if you have a verb that in French is reflexive, maybe in Spanish is not, and vice versa. So that's the only thing. But in general, the logic, the rules are the same, and of course, they use reflexive pronouns. So by the end of this class, you will conjugate AR, IR, and AR, ER, and IR reflexive verbs in present tense. Maybe you already, maybe you remember that the previous class, last week, was actually about reflexive regular verbs in Spanish in present tense, and not just present tense, regular verbs in Spanish. And we studied present tense, past tense, and future tense. And the groups that we practiced were those three, the groups that Spanish grammar uses to um, differentiate the different kinds of verbs, the different families, the different verbs families in Spanish in order to be understood quickly. So we are going to find this division as well among reflexive verbs, but there will be one difference, and it's actually the second point that we will find here. Understand and apply reflexive pronouns. Which are those reflexive pronouns? Me, te, se, nos, and se. I know that phonetically, this me, te, se might sound for French-speaking people like the possessive pronouns, but no, these are reflexive pronouns. So this is something that I want to clarify right away. Me would be the me, te would be tu, and then se would be su. Sorry, because switching between Spanish, French, English sometimes is quite difficult. So me, me, te, tu, se, su. And nos would be nu, and se would be the same su. So this is it, to clarify, because I know French speaking people watch our lives, and of course Spanish and French, they are brothers. They are absolutely similar. The only one difference is the pronunciation, but the structures, the pronouns are the same, are essentially the same. One or two exceptions, but never mind. So we have these groups, AR, ER, and IR verbs as well, but we will add this reflexive pronouns, me, te, se, nos, and se. Here there is a one missing reflexive pronoun that I didn't add, that is os. This is the reflexive pronoun that is used for vosotros in Spain. So normally I don't add anything related to vosotros and its conjugations because I teach Spanish mostly in my private classes to English speaking people living in the Americas. And of course, in order to be very practical, I don't explain the vosotros because they won't use it here in this continent. But if you like to move to Spain and if you need to learn Spanish because you're living you're going to live, you are visiting, you are moving to Spain, of course you will need to understand how to use vosotros. This is something that people from the Americas, we know, we can, let's say, guess, like we can guess that the most likely conjugations for each verb they apply to vosotros, but we don't actually know like all the conjugations, so that will be better to be studied with someone from Spain because that will be much more accurate. That's why I don't add it here in the list. And finally, make sentences using two verbs where the second is a reflexive one. That means where the second verb is a reflexive verb. How is that like? Well, you have the reflexive verb wash, like washing hands. Lavarse, las manos, lavarse, washing your hands. And let's suppose that you want to say I want. Yo quiero lavarme las manos. I want to wash my hands. So if you have one verb before this reflexive verbs will act differently. So that's all that we're studying today. How to conjugate those verbs, how to apply the reflexive pronouns, and how to manage the way to use a reflexive verb with another one. That's what we're studying today. So I always want to I want to start. I really like when the kickstarting point is a question, and also a question with its answer. We have a question here. ¿Te lavas las manos antes de comer? ¿Te lavas las manos antes de comer? A reminder for English speaking and French speaking people. In Spanish, we can skip the personal pronoun. Even though if we are using the reflexive pronoun, we can still skip the personal pronoun, the subject pronoun, okay? So I can perfectly say, tú te lavas las manos antes de comer, or te lavas las manos antes de comer. It is the same, okay? So, te lavas las manos. Remember, te refers to you. That's something that we studied in the object pronouns for English. So, te lavas, do you wash your hands before eating? Before eating? Yes, I do. Remember, if you ask a question, a yes no question in English, your most likely answer in English will be, if it's a yes no question, yes I do, yes I don't, no I don't, etc. But in Spanish, we practically repeat the structure. So sí, yes, I do will be, instead it will be in Spanish, yes, I wash them. Okay? Sí, me las lavo. I wash them. Where las will be them, the hands. So, do you wash your hands before eating? ¿Te lavas las manos antes de comer? Yes, I do. Yes, I wash them. Sí, me las lavo. ¿Por qué tengo que lavarlas? Why do I have to wash them? Why do I have to wash my hands? That's going to be the most natural question in English, though. Why do I have to wash them? Or why do I have to wash my hands? ¿Por qué tengo que lavarlas? So, in the first question, we have a perfectly common present tense sentence with a reflexive verb, lavarse, wash. Wash yourself something. Yes, sí, me las lavo, I wash them. I wash them. In this case, we have a direct object pronoun in the sentence. So notice how the structure changes a little bit as well. Why do I have to wash them? Why do I have to wash my hands? ¿Por qué tengo que lavarlas? Now that we involved a second verb, the verb tener, tengo, I have, why do I have to wash them? Porque tengo que lavarlas. Of course, after scanning this question, its answer, and the following question, of course, we won't completely understand what a reflexive verb is or how it works like, etc. Of course, we will develop the class, but please try to study, try to scan, try to understand how these underlined words are working, are changing, even though they are related to the same verb. Lavarse, te lavas, me lavo, me las lavo, lavarlas. Hola tía, bendición, hello. Dios te bendiga, Miguel, or Ale. I think it's Alejandro. Yes. Hola, Dios te bendiga. Okay, great, Miguel, that you are Miguel or Alejandro that are here with us as our audience, as our students, because it is great. Miguel is a great student of English as a second language, so this class will be great for him to practice his listening comprehension. That's what I was talking about when it comes to these two kind of lives, the Spanish one and the English one. So let's continue. Key points we have to keep in mind when it comes to reflexive verbs. Here it says definition in simple terms. I think it's it remained from the previous class, but well, it works as well. Reflexive verbs are used when someone does something to themselves. How is this like in English? In English, we'll say something like, I wash my hands, or I comb my hair, or I get dressed myself. In English, it is divided into using my or using myself. That kind of actions. I'm talking about that kind of actions. Those actions where you're doing something on your own body or on your own mind as well. Recordarme, like to remember myself. Like I'm doing the action of remember to myself something, like an auto reminder or so. This is the kind of sentences we will have to manage with reflexive verbs. The actions that we do on ourselves. So when someone does something to themselves, this, I'll say 90% of cases will be handled by using a reflexive verb. In Spanish, they end in se. Lavarse, bañarse, despertarse. So the reflexive pronoun se will go at the end. When we're dealing with the base form of the verb, of course, like to wash, to take a bath, to wake up. Those three verbs are to wash, to take a bath, or to shower, no, to take a bath, and to wake up respectively, okay? So I'm talking about the base form of the verbs, indicative. Lavarse, bañarse, despertarse. Notice how that se, the particle se, goes at the end, making part of the same word. For French speaking people, this is not like this. In French, you put se before the verb, but separated from the verb. So this is an important difference if we compare French and Spanish. So here in Spanish, you will make just one word and you add the se at the end. This is how a reflexive verb looks like in its infinitive form. And the structure, subject, reflexive pronoun, verb conjugated in present tense. This is the structure. Of course, we'll see the structure clearly or clearer here. Yo me levanto. This is personal pronoun yo, reflexive pronoun me, levanto is the actual verb. Yo me levanto, I get up. Yo me levanto, I get up. Tú te duchas. So tú is the subject pronoun, te reflexive pronoun, duchas the actual verb. The verb is take a shower, ducharse. Notice how when it comes to when I go back to the base form of the verb, I'll say ducharse, ducharse, having the se particle at the end, ducharse, because it's the infinitive form, is the base form of the verb. But now that I'm actually conjugating the verb, I'm actually using the verb, I have to break it down. I have to use the reflexive pronoun according to the person who's doing the action. Notice how I have to say yo me, but tú te. Okay? This for for English speakers, this is totally new. This is totally new because in English it doesn't exist. Like it doesn't exist in this way. Okay? Remember, I just said that in English, reflexive actions are said by using my or myself. But here, as I said to my students in the private lessons, this is a total new package. This is a new package of a new conjugation package. So that's something you have to spend time on. Okay. So yo me levanto, I get up. Tú te duchas, you take a shower. But ella se maquilla. She puts on makeup. Ella se maquilla. That means that she is doing that action on herself, on her own body, in this case, on her face. So, ella se maquilla. That's why those three actions are expressed using reflexive verbs. Yo me levanto, I get up. I'm practically taking all my body to stand up. Yo me levanto. Tú te duchas, like you brought your own body to the shower, to take a shower, to be cleaned. Tú te duchas, a reflexive action as well. And so there will be the action of um, putting on makeup because it's on our own body. That's how it works. Reflexive pronouns go before the verb in most cases. When they say in most cases, they mean present tense. Present tense, not only present tense, I'm sorry. When we're working just with the reflexive verb as a single verb of the action, okay? Because if we have another verb acting in the action, the structure, the order of the sentence, the no, let's say the place of reflexive pronouns will be different. Okay? So let's go back to the slide, because in this slide, I put subject pronouns versus reflexive pronouns. This is, oh, well, actually, here in this slide, in this grid, we have vosotros, vosotras, so great, because it's global. And we have the difference. Subject pronouns, we have yo, tú, all the pronouns that you already know, but each one will have an equivalence, a reflexive pronoun. An equivalence is a reflexive pronoun. Can they work together? Of course, they can. Can reflexive pronouns work by themselves? Yes, of course they can. In a reflexive action, can the subject pronoun work by itself without a reflexive pronoun? Not at all. Okay. This uh, this this is something that we have to keep in mind, that to express the reflexive action, reflexive pronouns must be there. It doesn't matter if you don't mention the subject pronoun. It is okay. Remember, in Spanish, as other Roman languages, the person is expressed in the verb itself. But reflexive pronoun it mustn't be skipped. Okay, so yo has its reflexive pronoun me, tú, te, él, ella, usted. These are he, she, you, but the formal you will work with se. Nosotros, nosotras, we will work with nos. Vosotros, vosotras with os. Ellos, ellas, ustedes, once again with se. Maybe more or less you've been like sort of understanding why the word se is so common in Spanish. Notice that just here we have it working with 6 personal pronouns. So you will find this word a lot, the word se in Spanish. Okay, so these reflexive pronouns are going to be used when using a reflexive action. So what is a reflexive action? This is a reflexive action. Get up, take a shower, putting on makeup, getting dressed. Those are reflexive actions, those that you do on yourself. And now you can clearly see how they are placed in a sentence. First, the personal pronoun. It can't be like it might be there or maybe not. The reflexive pronoun, mandatory, and the verb. The verb conjugated if it's present to present tense, if it's past, etc. In this case, we have sentences with a single verb, where the single verb is a reflexive verb. Okay, here it is pretty easy. Which are those common daily reflexive verbs? The common daily reflexive verbs, as this title expresses, reflexive verbs are commonly the daily routine actions. In French, it's the same situation. Most daily routine actions are reflexive actions. So it is in Spanish as well. Let's take a look at it. Despertarse, to wake up. Bañarse, to bath, to take a bath. Cepillarse los dientes, to brush your teeth. Peinarse, to comb your hair. Maquillarse, to put on makeup. Sentarse, to sit down. Acostarse, to go to bed. Vestirse, to get dressed. Important things to spot here. all those reflexive verbs are listed in their basic form, in their indicative basic form. They are not conjugated. So when you find reflexive verbs in this state, this situation, they will always show the word se at the end as a part of the same word. Despertarse, bañarse, cepillarse, etc. But it's when you start conjugating them, I wake up. And this moment is where you have to break the verb down, and turn the se particle into a reflexive pronoun which agrees with the person that is doing the action. If it's I, will be me. What will you do with the rest of the verb that still what do you do with the rest of the verb that leaves still without using? You conjugate it into a present tense form. Okay? Yo me despierto. The verb despertar without the se, without se, does it exist? Yes, it does. It does. Despertar. This is when you wake someone up. Oh, yo despierto. Yes. But if the person who's waking up is yourself, so you're waking up yourself, you'll say yo me despierto. So you keep the present tense conjugation, but you simply add, you keep the present tense conjugation of the verb, but you add the reflexive pronoun. Okay? Let's see some examples of this thing that I just explained. So we got those three reflexive verbs: levantarse, to get up; vestirse, to get dressed; and acostarse, to go to bed. Now let's pick levantarse, the verb get up. Notice how we have the same structure, the structure that I highlighted here in yellow, in a very, very light yellow. These are the same endings that we had when we studied regular verbs in present tense. Do you remember? We have o. This is the ending for yo conjugations in present tense. As, the ending for tu conjugations in present tense. A, ending for he, she, it, and formal you present tense conjugations. Amos, ending for nosotros present tense conjugations. And an, present tense conjugation ending for they. So this is basically the same that we studied on regular verbs class, but now we have to add this reflexive pronoun just with the verbs that follow it. Okay? Because not all verbs can be reflexive. We have verbs that have this double identity, like the verb levantar. Of course, the verb levantar by itself means lift, when I lift something. But yo me levanto, when it turns to be levantarse, now that means that you're waking up. Okay, so you will find this dual entity in some verbs, not all of them. Okay, and in a much more advanced use of Spanish, you'll find that Spanish-speaking people, they tend to add the se, the reflexive ending the reflexive pronoun to lots of verbs like eat, speak, drink as well, for some specific situations, okay? This is more like advanced Spanish, so I won't delve deep into it. But I wanted you to see. I wanted you guys to see this endings for you to identify that this is actually the same that we studied last week for regular verbs in present tense. But the only one difference is we're adding this reflexive pronouns when the verb calls for it. Okay, when we have a verb that can actually and perfectly work as a reflexive verb. Okay, this is the difference. Now let's practice together. Let's see. We have the on one side we have the English sentence, and on the other side we have the Spanish translation. I wake up at 6. Notice how in English the phrase "I wake up at 6" it has no traces of a reflexive action. It doesn't say I wake up myself or I wake up my body. No, no, no. You don't say that in English. So it's pretty shocking. It's pretty shocking to see how it changes in Spanish. That now it is me despierto. Like I wake up myself. Me despierto a las 6. I wake up, me despierto. She brushes her teeth. Now in this action, brushing teeth. Now in this action, we can see how in English we can take advantage of possessive pronouns in order to see, no, that's not the right word. In order to be clear about what are we doing the action on. In this case, on our teeth. She brushes her teeth. Ella se cepilla los dientes. Whose teeth? Her teeth. Ella se cepilla sus dientes. But the difference is that in Spanish, when we use this kind of sentences, we don't necessarily use the possessives. We normally use simply like the simple article and that's it. Ella se cepilla los dientes. You can perfectly say ella se cepilla sus dientes, but it's not that common as it is in English. And number 3, it says we go to bed at 10. Nos acostamos a las 10. Maybe Spanish-speaking people, we can feel like we can have the temptation of say, nosotros vamos a la cama a las 10. You can translate it literally, of course, but this will be more acostarse, the action, the reflexive action, Nos acostamos, like we go to bed to sleep at 10. Nos acostamos a las 10. How can we incorrectly use reflexive verbs? Mixing up the reflexive pronouns. So you can take the se pronoun, you can take the se as a word and put it to all the personal pronouns, put it to all the people doing a reflexive action. No, remember, each one will have its reflexive action. Yo, me, tú, te, él, se, nosotros, nos, ustedes, se. So we can't put se with everybody. Even though se works practically with 80% of personal pronouns on the grid, on the table, and the table is not the word, on the in the shim, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you have to put se everywhere. No, because se will work with specific personal pronouns. Now let's see this. This is something that, well, I don't know if you guys have any questions. I know that maybe most of people connected right now are here to practice their English. But if there's someone that is practicing, that is actually studying the Spanish topic, please let me know in the chat if you have any questions, or if you have something that is still not too clear, because this content, this topic can be very confusing for English speaking people, or any other language which is not having these reflexive actions. Okay, so feel free to ask me, if in the day, it can be on the chat, it can be on the comments box, if you're watching this live later. So just let me know. Okay, how reflexive verbs work with another verb. In this case, we are not having the reflexive verb only in the sentence. No, we have another verb as well. When you use a reflexive verb in Spanish, the reflexive pronoun me, te, se, nos, se, those that we are very aware of, must always match the subject of a sentence. Well, this is something that we have said before. Yo me lavo las manos, like I wash my hands, or I wash hands myself, because me in this case will be more myself, but in English it's much more natural to say my hands. However, where you place the reflexive pronoun depends on whether the verb is conjugated alone or used with another verb. It might be an infinitive verb, a gerund verb, etc. How is this like? So let's turn this little text into examples. So let's jump back to what we've been studying so far. When the reflexive verb is conjugated normally, that means because it is the only verb acting in a sentence. So the reflexive pronoun, goes before the verb. Yo me cepillo los dientes. I brush my teeth. Me matches yo. This is something that we are pretty aware of. Cepillo, in this case, cepillo is conjugated from the verb cepillarse. It's conjugated for the first singular person. Yo me cepillo. Okay, we're pretty clear so far. This is just one verb, and the only verb in the sentence it's reflexive. So yo me cepillo. Personal pronoun, reflexive pronoun, verb, and the rest of the complement. That's it. Now let's see what will happen with a second verb involved, with another verb involved. Oh, hold on, because I need to adapt this in order to be less, not to be too down. Yes, because it is pretty annoying to have it here so down. Oops. Okay, here we go. Okay. Yeah, I think it's much better displayed in this way. Okay. When the reflexive verb follows another verb, for example, it can be a modal verb like poder, tener que, deber, etc. Oh, I had the list here and I didn't see it. For example, modal verbs like poder, querer, tener que, the reflexive pronoun can be placed in two ways. Important. We are focusing on the reflexive pronoun here. So this is what we're going to move in a sentence, okay? We have the first option, option A, attach the pronoun to the infinitive. Example, yo puedo cepillarme los dientes. What is the conjugated verb here? The verb can. Yo puedo. Remember, the verb can in its infinitive form is poder. But now it doesn't say poder anymore. It says puedo. That means it is conjugated. Yo puedo, I can, cepillarme. So I took the verb cepillar and I used the reflexive pronoun that matches, that agrees with my personal pronoun, which is yo, and I put it on the last part. I attached it to the infinitive verb, which is always placed in the second position. So first position will be, of course, a personal pronoun. If we have it, if we don't have it, of course, the first position will be the first verb, which is going to be conjugated. And the second verb will be the reflexive one, having its infinitive structure, and we add the reflexive pronoun that matches the person who's doing the action at the end. Yo puedo, I can. Cepillarme, I can brush my teeth. Yo puedo cepillarme los dientes. Cepillarme is the full combination of cepillar, which is the verb, and me. So I won't use the se ending anymore, because even though the second verb, the reflexive verb, is taken as an infinitive, it will still keep something, anything like about the reflexive action, so that we have to that means that we have to keep the reflexive pronoun at a certain point, at any place. So it must be at the end of the second verb. Yo puedo cepillarme. Let's suppose that is not about me, it's about you. Okay, tú puedes. So tú puedes, not puedo anymore, because now it's you who's doing the action. Tú puedes cepillarte los dientes. So I adapted the verb brush instead of cepillarme, because now the action is no longer about me, it's about you. So cepillarte. Tú puedes cepillarte. Of course, we don't pronounce it in that way. We say, puedes cepillarte. Tú puedes cepillarte los dientes. You can brush your teeth. Tú puedes cepillarte los dientes. So the reflexive pronoun is attached to the infinitive. Is this the option B? No, I don't think that I put the... Oh, no. Okay. So the reflexive pronoun is attached to the infinitive. The same meaning. I can brush my teeth, but this is supposed to be at the end of the next slide. Sorry, we'll go back. Oh well, yeah, here it is, but it is not. It was not supposed to be placed here, but here in the next slide. Okay, and the option B will be placing the pronoun before the conjugated verb. How is that? Yo me puedo cepillar los dientes. But it's the same meaning. I can brush my teeth, of course. Both options are grammatically correct and commonly used. I can say, oh, hello, Dara, I'm here, I'm late. No worries, Dad. Welcome. And I must confess that in my life, I think I've been using this option B order much more than the option A. Maybe it's just a matter of like comfort. I don't know. But in Spanish, we're very flexible with the structures, and both structures are very common, very commonly used. Yo me puedo cepillar los dientes. So in this case, we're putting the personal pronoun in the first place, of course. The personal pronoun, the reflexive pronoun, we will like take it away from the verb cepillar, and we will put it in the second place. Yo me puedo, the conjugated verb, the actually conjugated verb, or the actual conjugated verb. Yo me puedo cepillar los dientes. So the verb cepillar, brush, remains practically like cut, but the meaning is the same. Okay, so you can move this reflexive pronoun to be attached to the second verb, which is going to be the actual reflexive pronoun, or you can move it to the first position and the conjugated verb position. And the same is the meaning. Sorry, and the meaning is the same. Okay, so it is understandable in both ways. Okay, I added this here. It says something else. If you add object nouns like los dientes, el pelo, las manos, the teeth, the hair, the hands, in Spanish we typically use definite articles, el, la, los, las, not possessives like my, your, etc. This is something that I that I commanded, that I said very quickly at the beginning of today's lesson. And here we have the example. It says me lavo las manos, I wash my hands, instead of me lavo mis manos or yo me lavo mis manos. And I put a question mark here in green, highlighted in green, because this is not 100% true. Okay, what do I mean? Of course, in Spanish we don't use this possessive pronouns as in English for reflexive actions. No, we don't. We will commonly say me lavo las manos, of course, but it doesn't mean that me lavo mis manos, it's not correct. Okay, because you can perfectly hear, I don't know, toddlers, or I don't know. You can hear me lavo mis manos perfectly. It's not that common as me lavo las manos, but you can hear it as well. What does it mean? Veronica, does it mean if I am an English speaking person and I still get confused with this first structure, me lavo las manos, and I feel much more natural to say, at least for now, me lavo mis manos? Can I say it? Of course. Because it will be understood anyway. It will be understood, and it is not something that you'll say, oh no, this is not natural in Spanish. No, remember, in Spanish we're very flexible, and yeah, but of course me lavo las manos is the most common one. Okay, so this is a quick comparison between, yeah, I'm sorry, this word always I've always had issues with this, with pronouncing this word comparison. Well, I will compare English and Spanish structures when it comes to having one or two verbs in the sentence. In English, we have I brush my teeth, yo me cepillo los dientes, or yo me cepillo mis dientes as well, as I just told you guys. Toddlers, they can speak like that. Oh, mamá, yo me cepillo mis dientes. Yeah, of course. So it works as well. And please, and please, that sometimes people say, oh no, that will be like toddler talking. Uh, no, remember, what toddlers say is perfectly valid as what we say. Okay, so they are starting to speak, they are still experimenting with the language. So what they say is perfectly fine. Okay, with the time, of course, we make it more complex, but those very simple structures that they use are good as well. So, yo me cepillo los dientes, I brush my teeth. But now in the second line, let's add a second verb. I want to brush my teeth. Yo quiero cepillarme los dientes. So, like we saw some slides ago, yo quiero, the verb querer is the verb that we actually conjugate, the first verb. Yes, the second one, here is Alejandro Alejandro or Miguel sending the waving hands, the saying hello. And yo quiero is the verb that we actually conjugate. The original verb is querer. Yo quiero, I want. Cepillar is the second verb to brush. Remembering that we can add the adapted the adapted reflexive pronoun at the end, attached at the end. Yo quiero cepillarme. Or I can perfectly say yo me quiero cepillar los dientes. Remember that we have that option B, which is the one that your teacher uses most. So, yo me quiero cepillar los dientes. It is exactly the same. I want to brush my teeth. But the only one difference is instead of attaching that may because we are saying yo. Okay, the action is being made by me. That's why we're using me. But you have to adapt the different ones according to the personal pronoun who's doing the action. Okay? Yo me quiero cepillar los dientes. I won't attach the me to that reflexive verb anymore because I moved it to the place before yo and the first verb. But Veronica, doesn't mean that I can say me quiero cepillar los dientes. So like totally like dropping that yo, of course you can. Me quiero cepillar los dientes. Me quiero cepillar los dientes. Yes, it works as well. And now I added this last example. She needs to sit down. Ella necesita sentarse. She needs to sit down. You can perfectly say ella se necesita sentar. Keeping these two ways. Option A, or the way A, ella necesita sentarse. In this case, we're using se because the person who's doing the action is her, is ella, she. Ella necesita sentarse. But we can perfectly use the option B, saying ella se necesita sentar, putting se between ella and necesita. And that's it. They both work very well. So let's recap. This quick recap includes everything that we have spoken about this class. First of all, a reflexive verb is used when the subject and the object of the action are the same person. That is, the subject does the action to themselves. When I brush my teeth, when I comb my hair, when I take a bath, I'm doing things on myself. When I get dressed, when I put on makeup. In Spanish, reflexive verbs always end in se in their infinitive form. Okay, this is when the verb is not conjugated. When you see to wake up, to make up, to to put on makeup, to get dressed, this is the base form, the infinitive form that I'm talking about. When using reflexive verbs with modal verbs like poder, querer, necesitar, you can place the pronoun in two ways. The option B, the option A, before the conjugated verb. That means yo me quiero luchar. Oh, I explained this in such a way that that wasn't consciously. The sorry, it is backwards. It is backwards as I explained it before. I'm so sorry. Sorry, but well, uh, let's uh, let's wipe out this letters because it can be confusing. Sorry. Yeah, because in the previous slides it is backwards, like the one that is represented by the A is actually the B and vice versa. So I erase them to avoid some confusion. So we're doing well. Okay, you can place the pronoun in two ways. Before the conjugated verb, so yo me quiero duchar, or attached to the infinitive. Yo quiero ducharme. Both are correct and used frequently. Okay, you can use both. Both are correct. In my private lessons, I always say use the one that you feel much more comfortable with. So use either of them. So it is okay. And of course, you have homework. Why? Because these verbs, more than other verbs, they need practice. They need lots of practice to be mastered. It's totally possible, it's completely possible to master these verbs, but you need practice. So, what's the homework? You can talk about your daily routine. How? You can leave your comment here below in the comments box. You can say what you do. For example, yo me levanto a las 6, yo me baño a las 7, yo me cepillo los dientes, me visto, me maquillo y me voy al trabajo. So this me voy is a bonus because you have the verb ir, which is go. But if you say irse, so if you add this se, which comes from the reflexive verbs, you're saying I'm leaving, like I'm leaving to work. So you have to conjugate it like the way you conjugate the verb ir, but adding the reflexive verb, the reflexive pronoun before. Yo me voy. So you're saying I'm leaving. Okay? Practice switching between me levanto and quiero levantarme. This is absolutely important. Absolutely important. Why? Because in real life, Spanish speaking people switch between those two forms every time. And this is the other side. Like if as a student you pick one way to express reflexive verbs with a modal verb, it is okay. It works for you. It makes you feel much more confident when it comes to reflexive verbs in terms of communicating yourself, of course, in terms of, yeah, get to know people, having small talks, etc. But you have to be very aware of the fact that in Spanish, people switch between those two forms all the time. All the time. So it's better that you get used to both, that you get used to using both of them. maybe you feel comfortable speaking, producing the language in one way. It's good. But you have to train your ears, you have to train your brain to hear and understand quickly both of them, because they jump all over the place when we are speaking in Spanish. And of course, repeat full sentences aloud. Repeat full sentences aloud. Actually, Miguel has a very good idea that he's applying for his English studies. He completed a phrases list, like a daily routine phrases, a list of daily routine phrases in order to be said aloud at home, to practice his English, to practice English when he's doing those daily routine actions. So that's um, a great idea for practicing this reflexive verbs actions, because we do them every day, every morning, every night. So it is easy to remember them. It is easy to master them by repeating, by repetition, and it is core in the Spanish language. So this is the homework. I'll be very attentive to your comments. You can leave your full daily routine here. Feel absolutely free to do so. And of course, you can leave your questions, your comments below as well. And we'll I hope this lesson was useful for both audiences, for English speaking, for English, for students of English as a second language, and for students of Spanish as a second language as well. And well, I've been absolutely delighted to be here with you guys. Finishing this, we are jumping to the Spanish spoken, to the English class spoken in Spanish, explained in Spanish. So we're closing here and we're immediately opening the new one, which is going to be so, to, neither, and either. This is English. This is an English topic, but it will be explained in Spanish. Okay, so hope to see you there as well. And if you don't have time to have a look at it, so see you then. See you tomorrow as well. We will continue with our lives in our regular schedule. Take care. Have a good night. I'll be very attentive to your comments and keep on practicing. See you in 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, bye.